Welcome to the Spiritist Companion Podcast. My name is Yuri Castro, and I'll be your companion on this journey of study, reflection, and application of Spiritist teachings. If you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone else. Let's spread the seeds of goodness together, shall we? Today we're going to reflect on one of the most beautiful, perhaps, and most difficult teachings of Christ. Love your enemies. We live in times of conflict, of intolerance, and resentment. Perhaps never before has this call of Jesus been so timely to transform hatred into love, vengeance into forgiveness, indifference into solidarity. And we can find this passage on Matthew chapter 5, and I'm going to read it here. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. And then he goes on to say, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? And of course, the translation varies depending on the version of the Bible, but the message is still the same. This idea that if we're just liking the people that like us back, if we're just talking to the people that like what we have to say and vice versa, what are we doing that is any different than what pagans and tax collectors do? What reward will we get? But Master Jesus is inviting us to do differently, to rise above. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, Allan Kardec is going to comment that loving our enemies does not mean having the same affection we feel for a dear friend, but rather to avoid feeling hatred, not wishing harm, and being willing to forgive and to understand. And that's why perhaps this passage from the Bible, from what Jesus said, is one of the hardest ones to apply because, first of all, we need to understand what does loving our enemy means. Jesus was not speaking of a sentimental love, but of a state of consciousness that frees both the one who forgives and the one who is forgiven. He did not intend that we should have the same tenderness towards our enemies as we do toward a brother or a friend, because tenderness presupposes trust, and we cannot place our trust in someone we know wishes us harm. Can we actually do that, my friends? Loving our enemies, therefore, does not mean feeling affection for them. And then Kardec, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, he's going to list what loving our enemies actually entail. And these are valuable lessons. So I want to read them here, list them to you. He says to hold no hatred or resentment, nor desire for revenge, to forgive unconditionally the harm they have caused, to place no obstacles to reconciliation, to wish them good rather than harm, to rejoice rather than grieve at the good that befalls them, to extend a helping hand in time of need, and to abstain in word and deed from anything that may cause them harm. Lastly, it is to return evil with good without any intent to humiliate. It is a difficult list to apply, of course, but if we look at it, all those things are under our control. These are all things in our hands, all actions. To hold no hatred or resentment, to forgive, to wish them good, do not impose any obstacles to reconciliation, abstaining from anything that may cause them harm, and all those things. So these are things that are under our control, that fall under the umbrella, let's call the umbrella of loving our enemies. The logic of loving our enemies is revealed in divine justice. Because by the law of cause and effect, let's think about it, every wrong we commit returns to us as an opportunity for learning. But if we respond evil with evil, the cycle continues. But when we respond with good, we break the chain and we create new paths of peace. For how many years, perhaps centuries, millennia, who knows, have we not been responding to evil with evil, perpetuating the cycle of hatred and the cycle of true enemies? Hatred attracts hatred, but love is the only force capable of disarming it, said the author Leon Denis. Therefore, loving our enemies becomes a way of interrupting these old cycles, of transforming adversaries into future brothers and sisters in our journey. Resentment carries a lot of weight. Many of us carry deep hurts, some even from past lives. Why not? We may not remember them fully, but we do. Resentment is like a mental prison that ties us to the past. And the author Joanna de Angelis, who wrote Through the Hands of Divaldo Franco, she says that resentment is a process of self-obsession in which the victim becomes their own executioner. But when we forgive, we do not only set the other person free, we free ourselves as well. And we had a whole episode called The Blessing of Forgiveness in this podcast where we talk more in depth about forgiveness. We can even look at psychological and physical tolls that this lack of forgiveness, this lack of loving our enemies through the actions that we already talked about, can have in us. Prolonged resentment can cause physical illness, can create emotional and bodily disturbances, whereas forgiveness is an act of both spiritual and mental health. We're going to be helping ourselves and helping others. And who better to teach us about loving thy enemies than our Master Jesus? He demonstrated this teaching in action. When Judas betrayed him, Jesus called him friend. He used the word friend. Jesus knew everything that went inside the spirit, and he knew the weaknesses of the people around him, but he still bore no hatred. He still called him friend. When the loyal, faithful, passionate Simon Peter denied him, Jesus did not reproach him. Instead, Jesus entrusted him with his flock. And not that Simon Peter was an enemy per se, but anybody that is doing something against you is oftentimes considered an enemy. So if we think that one betrayed him in one way, the other one betrayed him as well when it mattered, we can also see how these two can, quote unquote, become enemies. But Jesus never had anything against them. And last but not least, when we're talking about enemies, we can think of those who crucified him. In that moment, in that dire moment of his passage here, what did Jesus say? What did he do? He said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. Here lies the essence. To love our enemies is to see beyond the temporary error and recognize the spirit in its process of learning. So I brought some practical applications here of loving our enemies. What are some things that we can do? Well, number one, pray for adversaries. Offer a sincere prayer that they may find peace and light. A prayer can do wonders. And when we're praying for those that are our adversaries or they are considered, let's say, our enemies, we're already doing a lot of good. Number two, practice silence. Yes, this one is hard as well. But when provoked, resist replying immediately. Breathe, count to 10 if necessary, and ask for spiritual guidance. Replace resentment with empathy. Try to imagine the pains that may have led them to act that way. When we're trying to see things through other people's eyes, we're going to find ourselves very surprised because empathy is going to rise in our spirit. Number 4, do good discreetly. If possible, help them in small ways. Help those enemies in small way. Kindness disarms hostility. Love drives hatred away. Number 5, forgive in stages. Forgiveness is often a process. Start by not wishing harm, then by calming your anger until serenity finally comes. It's a step-by-step process, but it is one that we can always start. It's never too late to start. Last but not least, self-examination. Ask yourself, might I be someone's enemy? Have I ever hurt someone? Such reflection helps us cultivate humility because we put ourselves in the other person's shoes and we can say, yeah, I've harbored feelings of resentment like that. I act in those ways as well in the past. So now I can look at it with more humility. Loving our enemies, therefore, is not only an individual exercise, it is also a collective challenge. In a world divided by wars, political rivalries, religious intolerance, Christ's teaching is the only true solution. Let's make no mistake, my dear friends. The law of love is the final destiny of humanity. Love for enemies is the highest degree of this law, and for that reason, Jesus placed it as a challenge, as an invitation. Allan Kardec and the spirits, through Spiritism, they teach us that the earth is moving toward a planet of regeneration, a world of regeneration, and no more one of trials and atonements. But we will only reach this stage when hatred is replaced with forgiveness, pride with humility, and resentment with compassion, little by little in every human heart. We all grow together. We can go quicker or we can go slower, depends on what we do. To love our enemies is to prepare the new world, which begins in every single heart. And just like that, we reach the end of our episode today. We learned that loving our enemies is not an impossible commandment, but a proposal for true liberation once we understand what that entails. Jesus showed us by his life that forgiveness is the key to peace. May we, dear friends, in our daily lives, pray for those who hurt us, overcome anger with serenity, replace hatred with kindness. In this way, we will be building within ourselves the kingdom of God. Thank you so much for being with me, and if this reflection touched your heart, as usual, share it with someone who may also be needing these words. Until next time, and may the peace of Jesus always be with you. With fraternal love, your Spiritist companion.